Hello and welcome to today's Your Author program. My name is Kevin L. Cooney and I'm a librarian in the Exploration and Creativity Department here at LAPL. And I am joined today with my colleague and friend Tina Lorno, adult librarian for the digital content team, also at the Los Angeles Public Library.
And hello. It's our
Hello.
pleasure to host the Your Author series today. And please feel free to use the chat box to communicate your thoughts, comments, questions throughout the program. And we will be answering your questions at the end. And also, don't forget to email ecdept@lapl.org. Just put that in the chat to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win a copy of today's book, Cardboard Kingdom, Volume 2, Roar of the Beast by Chad Sell.
In today's Your Author program, author Chad Sell will discuss his graphic novel, The Cardboard Kingdom, Roar of the Beast, where a mysterious monster stalks through the neighborhood at night. Every kid in the kingdom will need to join together to solve the mystery and defeat or master this menacing new monster.
And before we start, we want to thank our generous donors, the Lenore S and Bernard A. Greenberg Fund and the Library Foundation, for helping the library bring these amazing author and illustrator programs. And now, what we've all been waiting for, welcome Chad Sell.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be talking with all of you.
Yay, thank you. So I think you're going to be starting off with a
Yeah, Steve, we
Yeah.
can switch over to the slideshow. I can talk a little bit about myself and about my work, and then there'll be plenty of opportunity to answer questions from you and from anyone watching.
All right.
Alrighty, so this is young Chad. I grew up right in the middle of Wisconsin. Being from LA, you might not know where that is. That's right here on the map. All my best friends lived on the same block as me. And so when I was a kid, we could run around in our neighborhood, playing in each other's backyards and having adventures together. And we could pretend that the world was anything that we wanted it to be. We could imagine that we were brave adventurers exploring it all together. When I was by myself at home, I loved to draw. I would imagine all kinds of characters, and it felt like they would magically come to life just by drawing them. I think that creativity is kind of magical. It allows anyone to transform the world around them and bring the worlds inside their own imagination to life. I see all of my books as a celebration of the special kind of creativity that kids like all of you have. In the Cardboard Kingdom, lots of different kids live on the same block, just like me and my friends when I was growing up. But when I first started work on the book, I wasn't sure who all those kids would be. And so I let anyone send in their idea for a character, and that's how I found the 10 different writers who helped me tell the stories in the book. Each kid in the Cardboard Kingdom has their own costume and character. I love costumes because they allow you to use your creativity to transform yourself into something else, like a sorceress or a mad scientist or even a giant robot. Our second book came out last year, and it follows the same group of kids as they get ready for Halloween. Things get a little spooky in the kingdom when a mysterious new monster starts showing up around the neighborhood at night. It takes all of the kids on the block to uncover the mystery of the monster and save the kingdom in time for Halloween. Now, as much as I love cardboard and costumes, there's something I love even more, and that's drawing. There's nothing more magical for me than drawing a character and bringing them to life. But have you ever been surprised by something that you've drawn? That's what Doodleville is all about. This is Drew. All of her drawings are like her best friends, and they really do come to life when she draws them. She's even drawn a whole city for them that she calls Doodleville. One day, Drew shows her art club the biggest, most complicated doodle she's ever drawn, Levi the Leviathan. But the art club isn't sure what he's supposed to be, a scary monster or something, because he's really kind of goofy and not very scary at all. What exactly is a Leviathan anyway? When a drawing doesn't turn out like you wanted it to, you might feel bad about it, and that might make you feel bad about yourself. That's what happens to Drew. So she tries to cross out Levi because she thinks he was just a big mistake. But when she does that, all the bad feelings Drew has inside herself go into Levi instead, and so he becomes a monster. Levi feeds on all of Drew's darkest feelings, and he just gets bigger and bigger until he threatens all of Doodleville. But Drew's friends in art club are there for her. Each of them is a super talented artist of their own, and they've brought their own characters to life too. They all have their own specialties like superheroes and sci-fi and even magical butterflies. By working together, everyone in art club will team up to take on the Dark Leviathan. With Doodleville, I wanted to explore the good and the bad about creativity. Although it's magical, it's also complicated. Just like Drew, my drawings don't always turn out the way I expect them to. They can surprise me in good and bad ways, and sometimes it feels like I just can't draw anything right at all. So aside from the magical moments, it's also a whole lot of work. This is a page from Big Banshee's story in the Cardboard Kingdom. When I'm talking with kids, I like to show some of the steps that I take in making my art, because although this is the final page you'll see in the book, it starts out looking really different. Even as a professional cartoonist, I don't get everything right on my first try. When I'm figuring out a page, I draw really lightly and really loosely. I make lots of mistakes, and that's fine. I just fix them up as I go along. There are lots of steps in the process, and with each one, I try to make everything look a little bit better and a little bit more finished until I get to the final page that you see in the book. This is the very final form of it. I draw all my books digitally on my desk on a tablet monitor hooked up to my computer. Most of my books take me about a year to finish, which might sound like a really long time working at home all alone, but luckily I have two nice cats who like to keep me company. Their names are Ivy and Edie. Now, I've told you a whole lot about my creative process and all the magical parts of making my comics. But to be honest, the very most exciting part of being a children's book author is getting to see the incredible cardboard costumes and creativity of kids like you. I chose cardboard for the Cardboard Kingdom because I like the idea of creating something amazing out of ordinary stuff you have lying around the house. You can empty out your recycling bin to craft your own costumes and kingdoms. It's not about making things look perfect or professional. It's about making something colorful and fun with your family and friends. If you like drawing more than dressing up in cardboard costumes, maybe you can draw your own doodles and your own Doodleville. Maybe you can make up your own comics. You might not think you can, but these are all comics made by kids. I'll share my own cartooning tips with you in a few minutes. All of you have your own interests and your own ways of being creative. You can tell your own stories in whatever way you want, whether by drawing comics or dressing up in costumes or writing a play or singing a song. I just hope you know that your stories are worth telling no matter what. You can make your own magic. So thanks so much. That's the end of my little talk. My next book is Doodleville Art Attacks, which is the new Doodleville book, and that comes out this fall. So Steve, we can come back to the cameras, and if you have any questions, Kevin and Tina, I'm happy to answer them before my drawing demo.
Sure. Okay. So one of the first ones I thought of was, what were some of the challenges you faced with getting your work published the very first time?
I had lots of challenges. Making a book is so much work, and one of the difficulties of being a creative person is that it can be hard to know if you'll ever make it. Get published, get your big thing made, and even then, like, how will it be received? Will you be able to make a living at it? So it took me a really, really long time to be published as an author. But just like Drew and Doodleville, I had been creating characters and telling stories ever since I was a kid. And it's a lot of those characters that have shown up in Cardboard Kingdom and Doodleville. So even though it took me a long time, those characters and stories kind of grew with me and eventually came out in these books. So book one of Cardboard Kingdom was my first book, and it didn't come out until I was 35. So
did you find your creative process constantly being refined as you kind of made your way towards kind of your finding your voice, I guess? Did that kind of take a while?
Yeah, there's just the ability to draw. I became a better and better artist as I just kept drawing and trying new things. But also developing your ability as a storyteller is tricky. Figuring out what exact story you want to tell. Some of my earlier versions of Doodleville and Cardboard Kingdom, they either took themselves too seriously or they were too heavy and emotional. And it took me a while to find the right balance between the emotional weight of the books, but with all the fun and adventure that is hopefully in those books.
Right. All right. Go ahead, Tina.
What was the best part about collaborating with other writers to create the Cardboard Kingdom? And then I was curious if Doodleville was also a collaboration.
So Doodleville was just my own thing, and the last few years I've put out one book each year, switching between Cardboard Kingdom and Doodleville, and that was kind of by choice because I like both processes, but then I need a break after doing each book. You know, book one of Cardboard Kingdom, it really kind of like felt like magic fitting everything together. I had found all 10 writers that I worked with through a website that I had set up where anyone could send in their story idea for Cardboard Kingdom. And just the way that everything kind of synced up and how we found connections between each of our characters in each other's stories was such like an exciting process. All the different kids show up in each other's chapters. And just there was nothing I loved more than just having a phone call with one of my creators and talking through a story and figuring everything out. When I'm writing by myself, if you get stuck, you're just stuck. It just takes time to figure out, oh, how should this problem resolve? How does this character figure that problem out? But when you're working with other people, you can talk, you can brainstorm, and you can often work through pretty much anything over a phone call, as long as you're open to each other's ideas and build on each other's ideas.
Great, thank you. Was it the same collaborators for the first Cardboard Kingdom that you went with on the second?
Yes, yeah, all the same characters, all the same creators carried over for book two.
Was that a process learning how to collaborate in that fashion? Because it's kind of unusual.
Yeah. I mean, with any kind of collaboration or project, I'm a planner, I'm a worrier. I worry about everything that can go wrong. And so I tried to anticipate like where might we have disagreements? How can we resolve those ahead of time? So, and I tried to make my expectations crystal clear from the start. And so it went really well. You know, we discovered things along the way. There were hardships and disappointments, and I certainly made mistakes. But you know, I think that we were all just so thrilled at the opportunity to tell these colorful, sweet, imaginative stories together. And when we all came together and worked on the book, we worked on it for like a year or two without any book deal, without even my agent knowing about the book. I just was so confident that this was like a story worth telling. And we got it all together before I even showed it to an editor and before we sold it. So we weren't even sure if we would ever make any money with the Cardboard Kingdom whatsoever.
Right. Kind of labor of love kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, I told everyone, I can guarantee you I will draw these stories, even if we just put them up online for free. Like, we might not ever make any money at this, but we will make these comics together.
Yeah, cool. Is there someone you think about, or a specific target audience or person when writing certain characters, or did that come from your collaborators?
You know, a lot of the characters in Cardboard Kingdom are inspired by our own childhoods. You know, some of my collaborators have said that they feel like the stories that they've written are the stories they wish they had as kids. So I think that it's a lot of nostalgia and looking back at ourselves and thinking through what we were working through in our younger years.
That's cool.
Excellent. Do you use the same creative process in the same like computer setup when you're working alone or when you're working collaboratively?
Yeah. With Doodleville, I mix things up a little bit because it, like, in that world, art comes to life. And so in some cases, the kids visit the Art Institute of Chicago and paintings come to life. And that a lot of that happens in the sequel. And so with that, I was depicting like living paintings and things, which are much more elaborate than kids in cardboard costumes. But for the most part, the approach and the style is the same for both series.
Well,
Cool.
I already did the follow-up about collaboration, so I'm going to ask, do you normally work on one project at a time, or do you have several writing projects going on simultaneously?
I'm working on 3 different book series at the same time right now, which is a little much. With publishing, there are lots of there are a lot of steps in the process.
Mhm.
Uh, there's the writing, and there's the art, and then there's like the printing, the editing, the copy editing, when people check to see if I misspelled or mistyped anything in the book. So I found it really useful to have a bunch of different irons in the fire.
Mm.
So for example, I might have my collaborators working on their scripts for the next Cardboard Kingdom while I'm drawing Doodleville, and then planning and pitching a whole different book series that'll come out in a few years. And yeah, so that's what the last few years of mine have looked like. And I feel lucky that I've been able to have so many things in the air.
How do, how does your workflow go when you're working on multiple projects? Do you specifically have times of the day where you say I'm going to do this, or is it more deadline kind of influenced? I'm kind of curious about multiple projects going on all the time and how you kind of shift.
Yeah, well, I've learned that I can pretty much draw all day, and I can write for like 1 hour, and then I'm tired. So that's kind of like a self-limiting thing. I think the bulk of my day is typically doing like the final art for any given project, and then working on scripts and ideas like while I'm out for a walk, and having my collaborators work on stuff, and then bouncing ideas around with them when they send in their scripts.
Did you find that sort of being forced to stay home because of the pandemic made you have a larger output, or the opposite?
It was tough, I find it so energizing and exciting and amazing to visit schools and libraries and do events in person. Um, I I was fortunate enough to have like a year and a half between Cardboard Kingdom and the pandemic, where I was able to visit and draw for kids and see kids in their cardboard costumes, like those photos I showed in my slideshow. Um, that it's so energizing to see my creativity sparking ideas in kids, and then they are creative on their own, and then it bounces back to me. It was really, really hard to put out. I put out 2 books during the pandemic. And not to get to see kids and hear their excited questions and ideas based on those books. So it didn't lessen my output, but it lessened the excitement about having stuff out in the world.
I can understand that. Now, you did a podcast for us back in 2019. And I looked through the questions that the kids asked, and I thought it would be fun just to kind of revisit and
Oh
see
gosh.
where you are with these questions. Now, one was from Cassie, and she asked if the Cardboard Kingdom is ever going to become a TV show. And your answer was no back then, but have you been approached recently, or has anything changed with that?
Yeah, I mean there have been talks and discussions, and like my fingers are crossed that it might happen someday. I think it would be so exciting. Can't you picture it like one episode of a different character each throughout the kingdom? I think that there's huge potential, but I mean, you folks are in LA. You know how Hollywood. You just can't tell. You just can't tell if things are going to happen or not. So it's something that we're hoping for, and that there have been changes since 2019, but you just don't know for sure.
Right. And then Eva had asked, why did you make your story a comic book?
Mm.
And I found that such an interesting question from
Yeah.
a young kid.
I think about that kind of thing a lot. When I was in college, I studied photography, I studied filmmaking, I studied fine art drawing and painting. And, it's a really good question to think about. If I have an idea or a project, what is the best way to tell that story or to bring that character to life? What I love about comics is that I'm a very visual person. When I think of a story, I think of the images that tell that story. And so, and I've always loved drawing and doodling. And so it just is a really good fit for me because I have the skills to draw a story that I see in pictures in my head anyway. And I love comics because they're not real life. They're simplifications of everyday life. They're exaggerations of everyday life. They're often, my comics are much less detailed than everyday life. Like so much of the clutter and the complexity of life is stripped away. And I really like the fact that you can kind of create an alternate reality in a comic that's so warm and inviting, and that a reader can kind of consume at their own pace, however fast they turn the page.
Just
Awesome.
do you ever draw in different styles, or do you have you found that this style is the one that kind of reflects your voice and kind of something you work towards, or do you ever just go nuts and just try something radically
Yeah.
different?
I love drawing in different styles. I love trying out different tools, even if it's just like a different marker or a pen or brush.
Oh,
It can just get your brain working in whole different ways. I was just talking to a friend today who's like taking a pottery class, and I was like, oh, that sounds great. Just like working in a completely different way. Your
right.
brain works differently. You see differently. Your hands are operating differently with that material. So yeah, I do very different styles, and if I do like YA or adult books in the future, I think that my style would look really, really different.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I just love the kind of fun, colorful approach that I've done with Cardboard Kingdom and Doodleville.
Yeah.
Just kind of like really simple and dynamic and imaginative.
Yeah, and fun and yeah. So, did you hide any Easter eggs in your books for?
Oh gosh. Um, uh, one of my favorite ways of inserting Easter eggs is in the Doodleville series, because a lot, like some scenes in book one and then a lot in book two take place at the Art Institute of Chicago. And so many of the living paintings and characters are inspired by real paintings and characters there. So that's it's not exactly an Easter egg, but I just love the idea of kids going to the Art Institute and finding the ridiculous paintings that I based characters on, including this outrageous character, the baby in a hat. That's a real kid in a real painting.
Do you ever put in an Easter egg for your husband that only he would pick up on?
That's assuming he reads my books.
Fair enough.
He's very supportive.
Sure, sure.
No, I dedicated a book to him. That's as subtle as I get with him.
I got you.
We have a question from that's coming through from the audience from Jocelyn, and she asked, will there be a new character in future Cardboard Kingdoms? And this is a question that was posed from Ben, who is a huge fan.
That is a wonderful question. We are working on more Cardboard Kingdoms, and there will be multiple new characters in the next Cardboard Kingdom. Yeah, so so this is an unintentional Easter egg, Kevin. In the Cardboard Kingdom books, I have cute little like maps at the start and the end of the book of the neighborhood, and basically there was basically like a spot left over from like where all the kids, and so I left a question mark of new kid on the map, and many astute young readers have wondered who might that new kid be in the Cardboard Kingdom. And so we finally get to introduce some new kids in a third book of Cardboard Kingdom.
That's cool. Did you want to read the other question, Tina?
There was a nice comment from Catherine, who says she just became a children's librarian in 2020, but so she recently discovered Doodleville, and just thank you. The spark of imagination, just extraordinary. So
that's
you have a new librarian fan.
Thank you, Catherine. Do you think now would be a good time to do some drawing demonstration stuff?
Sure.
And
Sure.
finish up with any other questions that might come in or that you have.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so Steve, give me a second to switch over to my graphics program. Okay, I think that this should be fine. So Steve, you can turn me over to the, yep, this is perfect. So this is a program called Clip Studio Paint. It's like it's a program I love, but it's like for professionals. If you're a young artist who wants to draw on like a tablet or something, there are some other options like free apps or more affordable options like Procreate, GIMP, or Krita. But I'll just be drawing. I do my whole comics in Clip Studio Paint. You can see each page like this. So like I was saying before, what I love most about cartooning is that it can be so simple. Like I think a smiley face is quite an effective cartoon. I think that you can tell a lot of a story and make a very expressive character with just a smiley face. This is a doodle character in Doodleville, Mike. He likes to steal hats. A lot of characters in Cardboard Kingdom aren't that much more complicated than a smiley face. You add a nose, add some eyebrows, you have a young kid. And actually, something I like to show kids is even with just a few lines and a few dots, you can really make that character come to life. So watch, I'll draw basically the same thing, but I will give some mischievous eyebrows. And that's a very different expression, right? Same kid, very different feeling. I like to think of this as a scheming kid. And you can even, give all kinds of subtlety and nuance. Like those are similarly mischievous brows, but one is lifted and the mouth is a little bit different. And so this is more of a confused kid, right? I'm a big fan of mischievous eyebrows, but this, if you give it a frown, it goes from scheming to angry, right? So I just like to show a few options of how expressive you can be, even drawing very simply. With Doodleville, I designed the doodle characters to be really simple to draw because these are supposedly characters that are being drawn by kids and coming to life. And I wanted to show that you don't have to make a big complicated character to tell a story. So this is a character called Meatloaf, as simple as can be. I love seeing kids draw some of these doodle characters, and I love seeing kids draw their own characters and their own doodles and their own buildings and doodlevilles. Because everyone draws in their own way. There's no right way for any of these characters to be drawn. This is a slightly more complicated character named Kitty Bunny. You'll see that Kitty Bunny is mischievous. She has mischievous eyebrows. She is both a kitty and a bunny. So she has pointy cat ears, and a little cat face, and then she also has bunny ears. And now, drawing is complicated. Drawing realistically is really complicated, but you don't have to when you're cartooning. I find fingers and feet and toes and all of those appendages to be kind of complicated to draw. So with the doodles, I just simplified. No toes there for Kitty Bunny, but I think that she works as a character, Let's see. Oh, another doodle I really love drawing is Alex the Alien. What I like to tell kids is if you make your characters fun to draw, then you'll have an absolute blast drawing comics and cartoons with them because you set yourself up to succeed. This is Alex the Alien, and I think he is so fun to draw. He doesn't make sense. I don't know much about him. He's just this funny little guy that I doodled one day. Oh, maybe I'll close off the doodles drawing the big kahuna himself, Levi Leviathan. I often like to use kind of simple shapes to make up a character. So Levi the Leviathan his kind of big fang jaw stuff is really just 3 triangles. And then 3 more triangles. He has sort of a happy eyebrow. He has 2 kind of fins. A leviathan is kind of like a sea serpent. So that's what I imagine when I'm drawing Levi the Leviathan. And then he has kind of an underbelly with scales. And the scales are just zigzag lines. Why do anything more complicated than that? So that's Levi the Leviathan. So I like to start showing some of these doodles because they're really simple to draw, and I can draw them without sketching beforehand or anything like that. But like I showed you during my slideshow, when I'm doing a full cardboard kingdom page, I do a lot of sketching. And I like to emphasize that to kids because I definitely don't get everything right the first time. You might see as I'm just doing this that I'm making lots of little adjustments. Here I'm going to draw VJ, the beast. And I'm drawing kind of lightly because I'll go in more darkly as I develop it and as I figure out where everything's going to go. Now, with Cardboard Kingdom, I often draw the kid first, and then I draw the costume over them. It just is all part of me gradually figuring everything out. So let's see. Here, I often start the beast with kind of this rectangle. And again, the costumes in Cardboard Kingdom also are often based on very simple shapes. So the beast jaw is 3 triangles on top and on bottom. And so now I can just go in a little bit more confidently and draw in a little bit more darkly. And this is VJ the Beast from Roar of the Beast. So drawing human characters, I think, often is a bit more work. It's a little bit more tricky than drawing something like the doodles. But that's why I take multiple steps to figure out that process. Let's see, maybe I'll show Jack the Sorceress. Well, Jack the Sorceress looks kind of like VJ. Maybe I will draw Connie the Robot. She's one of my favorite characters to draw. She is dressed up like a robot. She's a fairly mischievous character. She has a pretty round face. She's got some serious bangs. And then she is going to be wearing her robot outfit, which is kind of a big rectangle. So I sketch it in like this. And that's basically some of the Cardboard Kingdom kits. That was all of the drawing stuff I had planned to show you, but if you have any questions about drawing or something that you find hard to draw, I'm happy to show you how I approach that. Kevin and Tina, did you have any other questions or any other questions come in?
Do you use a Cintiq or what equipment is that? Is that just a tablet that you're drawing on?
It's a knockoff Cintiq. Yes, so it's a computer monitor that I can draw directly on. That's hooked up to my computer. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for kids who might be curious about writing their own book or where to start? What steps can they take to?
Yeah, well, I think that you should start small. Steve, maybe you can come back to just my camera from the drawing. One thing that I love about comics is that you can literally just take a few pieces of paper, fold them, staple them, and you have a mini comic. If you want to be a cartoonist, that doesn't mean you have to start with big, giant 300-page books like my books are. You can play, you can develop your skills, you can try out some characters, try out a style, spend an afternoon drawing a little mini comic of them, see if you like it, see what works, see what doesn't, try something new the next day. I think that the most important thing with cartoons is like not to give up, to find parts of the process that you enjoy and that can keep you going and that keep you excited about doing it again. But then if there are parts of the process that don't work as well for you, to learn from that and to work on them, or to find collaborators who can do that with you. With some of my early graphic novel projects, I developed more confidence as an artist before I developed confidence as a storyteller. And that's part of why I looked for collaborators to work on Cardboard Kingdom with me, because I felt like, oh, this is a cool book idea. I just don't know if I can tell all these stories by myself. I don't even know who these kids would be in the Cardboard Kingdom entirely. And so working with those other people was really fun. It was great. We built this kingdom together. And in working with them, I developed the confidence of it as a writer to then write my own books like Doodleville. So that's another really important part of the process too.
That's such good advice, I think.
Oh, thank you.
We have a question from a viewer. A question from Mara, age 6. How do you draw Spider-Man?
Oh man, Spider-Man's tricky to draw. All those webs, all those muscles, and Spider-Man's often doing really weird poses because he's climbing up walls and swinging on webs. So I love superhero comics, but even I find Spider-Man quite tricky to draw. Yeah.
Another viewer is asking, what apps do you recommend for elementary age students who love to make comics?
So that's a good question. I'm not an expert. I know that things like iPads and tablets like that are really great to draw on, and that there are lots of apps for that kind of tablet. But I don't have an iPad. I don't know if the apps are available exactly. So I'm just not sure what to recommend.
Sure.
Gosh. So yeah, it's tricky.
Well, maybe if something comes up later, yeah. And one other question from a viewers: what is your new book series called? From another Ben who is also a big fan. Wow, a lot of Bens watching.
So that is a very smart question. I did mention I'm working on 3-book series. We haven't announced the new book series yet.
Gotcha.
It's very different. It's not graphic novels, but there are comics in it, and it's going to be a superhero story that's very funny with a new collaborator. But I can't say any more than that.
For sure.
But it'll be out next year. So yeah,
it's exciting.
What is the age?
Same age range as all my other books, like 8 to 12. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mel wants to ask, are there kids online classes that you might recommend to nurture creating zines or cartoons?
That's another fabulous question. But I don't know. Someone I met in Denver, Colorado, I think does a website called a2zine.com. I'm Googling it right now to see if that works.
Sure.
Oh, no, that's not right. Oh, darn. But you should look up like how to make a zine or a mini comic. There are a few different methods. There's one method that you can do with just one piece of paper folded up and cut in 2 places. And it's like a cute little 4-page mini comic. So yeah, the word to Google would be mini comic or zine. And I know that there are some online classes and stuff or in-person classes at libraries and community art centers and stuff like that.
Yeah. I had a question. What's something now that you've kind of gone through the process that you wish you knew when you were first starting out?
I mean, so much. I actually saw Ira Glass give a speech. He's a famous NPR host of This American Life. And he made this point about how when you are an aspiring young person in any creative field, that you compare your work to all like the great masterworks in that field, and I certainly did that. I looked at all of my favorite cartoonists, and I would hold up my drawings to theirs, and I'd be like, why am I not as good as them? And that's such a hard comparison to make, because they're like the best in their field. And Ira Glass said, like, it's okay to not be good for a long time, as long as you enjoy the process and keep trying to get better, then it's worth doing. But if it's you constantly hitting your head against a wall and just not liking the process, then it might not be the right field for you. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Was that
think
some?
you're. Oh,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Tina.
Kevin. Oh, I was going to say, I think your answer about like for kids to work collaboratively and work with your friends, then you're getting that, you're working among your peers, and you're not thinking so much about like that famous author. You're really,
Mhm.
looking to your friends and their skills, and it's not as, it feels like way less stressful for a kid.
Yeah, and collaboration can be tricky. You might not agree on a lot. What I think helped with Cardboard Kingdom is that I kind of laid out my goals and my plan for the big picture stuff. Like, this is what I want to do with this book. And so I made sure that anyone who wanted to work with me had those same big picture goals. They had the same destination in mind, so that ultimately we could figure out exactly how to get there in the end. We might come up with different ways of making that trip, but that we all agreed on the same final destination and the same goal for the book. And I think that's so crucial. I think when you really come into difficulty with any kind of collaboration, even if it's just working on a little comic strip together, if you both have fundamentally different ideas of what it should even be, then you're in trouble. So I think it's best to agree on the big picture stuff before you get stuck on any of the little details.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to your comparison thing that you were saying earlier. Was that something that you kind of struggled with as you were starting out, comparing yourself and getting frustrated that you weren't matching their level, and something you kind
Yeah.
of worked through?
Well, and fundamentally, every artist is different. We all see the world differently, and just our hands work differently in our drawing style. And so you might look at someone. There's one of my favorite cartoonists in the world is an LA artist, Jaime Hernandez, who does Love and Rockets. Not really kid appropriate, but
We had him as a library program as
oh,
well.
really?
Yeah.
So I look at his style and I think it's like absolute perfection, and then I try to draw like him and it just doesn't look like him, and you can feel like a bad artist because you can't do it. But fundamentally, I'm not Jaime Hernandez. Like,
Right.
we all draw differently. I might draw certain things that he wishes he could draw. I mean, doubtful, but
Sure. Sure.
we all need to figure out what makes us us, and
Right.
how that's a good thing. Where are our strengths, and how does that converge with what we like doing and want to put out into the world?
Yeah. I wonder if a lot of that too is just time, like having to put in the hours to understand what you like and kind of your voice. I wonder if that's one of those things that just takes a while too.
I mean, it did for me. I see some young cartoonists who are still in art school and putting out books, and they're amazing and they seem confident and well put together, and I'm deeply envious of them, but I also am really happy for them too.
Yeah, I guess everyone gets to their process. Yeah, I mean, everyone gets to where they want to be at their own pace, and you just,
Exactly.
yeah. We have another viewer question. Karen wants to know, which of your characters is the hardest for you to draw?
Oh gosh, that is a good question. Um, you know, different characters present different challenges. I've learned that giving your characters perfectly circular glasses is setting yourself up for a challenge, because it's hard to draw a perfect circle. And so I've kind of given up on that. So there are certain characters like Peter from Megalopolis and Alice the Alchemist who have like these circular glasses, and then I'm constantly drawing one too big or one too crooked or smushed. There are some characters whose costumes makes it kind of hard to draw them. like Connie the robot has this big bulky cardboard costume, and so it's hard. Some poses, it's like, can she even walk? Like just waddling? Like, so there are lots of different challenges that come up. In general, I try to design characters so they're not going to be super hard to draw. Like I was saying before, if you create simple characters that you enjoy drawing, then it's going to make drawing a comic a lot easier, because when you're drawing a comic featuring any given character, you have to draw them in a million different angles and a million different poses. And so it can really be challenging. Yeah. So, yeah. In Doodleville 2, there were a number of characters that are based on paintings, and that was extremely challenging because I had to draw these like living paintings multiple times. And so getting the right balance of like how to make them look as detailed and realistic as a painting, but also manageable for me to draw.
Right. That sounds really challenging.
I mean, it was awesome. Like some of those pages are the most outrageous things I'll ever draw. But yeah.
Was it something where you'd have to go back, like you didn't quite nail it, and you just have to keep trying to find the look that you were hoping to get in your mind to the page kind of thing?
You know, I think, circling back to one of the questions you asked earlier, I think actually learning to move on is one of the most important lessons you can have as a cartoonist, especially because you as a cartoonist, ultimately, you're trying to tell a story. And we as artists can get so hung up on, like you said, messing up something. That hand isn't right. The head is too big. The expression's kind of weird. But ultimately, as long as it isn't interfering with the clarity and effectiveness of the story you're telling, it really might not be worth fussing or redoing. And so I think so often, you know, in some of my early comics projects when I was younger, I would find myself redoing pages over and over again, and like to almost an astonishing degree. Whereas in fact, I think what would have been a more effective use of my time is to do the draft, do as much work as I could, telling the full story, set it aside, and look at it with fresh eyes later, or just move on to something totally different.
Right.
I think in that process, you're creating work and you are improving, and you're not just fussing over the same first few pages of a story over and over again.
Yeah, and you're finishing things, which I think is really important for people to do.
Yeah,
that's kind of one of those skills that it takes. I think people who are creative need to finish things in order to keep building on.
Yeah.
Tina, I've talked a lot. You go ahead and take over a little bit.
Well, are we close to our? Should we do our rapid fire? Or this or that?
Sure. Do you have anything else you wanted to ask before we get to that?
I did want to know what, Chad, what are you reading now? Is there anything that you that's in your to read pile that you're just?
I've been reading a lot of. I'm so confused about myself. I usually love fantasy, sci-fi, comics, but I've been reading all this nerdy nonfiction. I don't know. I'm officially old, I guess. I'm reading this giant book, The Dawn of Everything, which is a kind of questioning a lot of stuff about early man, you know, like the dawn of civilization. And I think that stuff is really cool to imagine what humans were like with much simpler technology, you know, when you're just making stuff out of stone and metal and bone. Like, I think that's just a really neat, I think with all the problems of modern society, it's really neat to transport yourself back into a different era where, you know, it was messier and grosser, but maybe simpler in a certain way. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. And just engaging your brain in a different way probably feels relaxing to you.
Yeah, I will absolutely do some caveman comics at some point.
All right. Do you want to do rapid fire, Tina?
Let's do it.
Let's do
This
it,
is
TL.
It's just a fun little game that we like to play, and we kind of themed it to kind of go with the book. So, like inside versus outside. So, So takeout food, Thai food or tacos?
Oh, Thai food for takeout, because I don't trust any place doing takeout tacos. I think it would all be messy, right? Like by the time you get home, you know, I've learned not to do takeout burgers. Anyway, this is supposed to be fast. So
No, it's okay.
yeah.
All right. Mountains or the beach?
Oh, mountains, yeah. The drama, the scenes, yeah.
Cardboard or metal?
Cardboard, yeah.
Yeah. Be hard to cut metal to make anything. Well, unless you're a machinist. Tree fort or blanket fort?
Oh, um, blanket fort. That's a lot cozier, less
That's what,
bugs.
that's what Tina
So,
said too. She said she queen of the blanket fort.
Indoor, lava, don't step on the lava. So staycation or world tour?
oh gosh, oh man. I'd say world tour. Yeah, I'm not a yeah. I like as a good staycation, and sometimes that's the most sensible thing. But yeah.
All
You're
right.
ready to go back outside.
Hmm.
And here's the last one. TV show or movie premiere? I guess like opening night of a movie.
TV show. I love a good TV show. I love starting a new show and you know that there are still like 4 seasons to watch. Like, isn't that the best feeling? Like, there's so much more of this world to dive into and enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for rapid questions. I think we're just about wrapping it up. Do you have any kind of final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Just I hope that some of this encouraged you to create your own stuff. And I hope that you feel empowered to be a storyteller and artist. I have a few little resources on my website, chadsellcomics.com, like coloring page books and some paper craft designs and things like that. But I think, there's nothing better than just making some stuff on your own out of cardboard.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate everything.
Sure.
Bye, everyone.
All
And
right.
Kevin, are you reading this the last bit
Am
or
I do you mean am I speaking impromptuously off of the cuff? I am. Thank you for joining us for today. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation with author Chad Sells. And remember to visit lapl.org to read more books in 2022. We also encourage everyone to register for the library's graphic novel challenge. Go to lapl.org/graphic novel for all of that information. It's tickering right down there. And don't forget to join us for our next year author, which is on April 15th with Emma Steinkeller, the creator of the best-selling and critically acclaimed middle grade graphic novel, The OK Witch. In The OK Witch and the Hungry Shadow, the hilarious and heartwarming sequel, which is the heartwarming and hilarious sequel to The OK Witch. There's some typos in this, which I'm speaking.
and and we hope to see you then. And I'd like to extend by expressing how much we all appreciate your support and the success of all our library programs could not happen without viewers like you. So thank you.
Thank you.